All right, 9.6, the quadratic formula, and we're going to be talking about using this to solve quadratic equations, and also we're going to talk about the discriminant. Right, so where is my mouse? It's not working. Nothing is working. Okay. All right, so our quadratic formula, the nice thing about the quadratic formula, I'm not going to make you memorize this. It's been given to you on your standards of learning formula sheet, so I don't feel like that you need to memorize this if it's going to be given to you there. There's no point in me making you memorize it. All right, so it is x is equal to, and notice we'll be finding x values, um, uh, minus b, or opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all that divided by 2 times a. And you can use this formula to solve any quadratic equation, whether or not it was factorable or not. You can use it for any equation. It's very helpful. It takes a little bit longer to do, but you can use it for anything. Quadratic equations, we have discovered, can be solved by factoring, by graphing, or using now this quadratic formula. And that happens only when the equation is set equal to 0. And then when you have it solved, the values of x will make that equation equal to 0. All right, so the discriminant is going to be the value inside that radical symbol. So everything here from b squared minus 4ac, just that information right there. Let's circle that so you know what I'm talking about. Just this in here is your discriminant without the square root sign. Okay, that discriminant will tell you if you have 2 real solutions, 1 real solution, or no real solutions. So it's very helpful to tell you what's going to be happening with your graph. Now, if the discriminant is greater than 0 or positive, there are 2 real solutions. So once you come up with this number right here, if it was a positive number, it's going to be 2 real solutions. If when you plug in everything and it equals to 0, then there is only 1 real solution, and that will be called a double root. And if the discriminant is less than 0 or negative once you solve everything, there are no real solutions. The solutions are considered non-real or imaginary. Okay? So these will tell you what's going on inside the graph. You do need to know these. They may ask you questions about it and say how many solutions based on the discriminant would you have and what kind. So you do need to know these. Just know if it's positive, it's 2. If it's negative, it's none. And if it's 0, it's 1. Okay? All right, now we're going to be learning the steps to use in the quadratic formula. The first thing you want to do is set the equation equal to 0, and in descending order, which means going down, or standard order. Okay? You're going to find the values of a, b, and c. You're going to plug them into the formula. You're going to solve the discriminant and put that answer back underneath the radical sign. You will simplify the denominator, and then you're going to split up the problem for the positive and negative answer, because we have a plus or minus symbol right here. That means there are going to be 2 different solutions, a positive version and a negative version. This symbol is not in your calculator, so you actually manually have to split it up. And then you're going to put all the numerator in the calculator at one time and get an answer, and then divide that answer by the denominator for both the positive case and the negative case. Now, when you're doing this problem, you'll hear me say, when we're talking about negative b in the front, instead of saying negative b, I will say the opposite of b, because it helps instead of writing a negative and then a parenthesis. Whoa, let's fix that. It helps when you're writing, if you write a negative and then parentheses and then you put some other negative thing in here, that's just too many negatives, and we have found in the past that causes a lot of problems. So if you will start thinking of anytime you see a minus b in the front, say the opposite of b. So if my b was 6, the opposite would be a negative 6, and that would go there. If my b was a negative 2, the opposite of negative 2 would be positive 2, and the 2 would go there. So it helps you so you don't have to deal with all the parentheses and the negative numbers. B squared inside, no matter what your B value is, will always be positive because a negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a positive is a positive. So whenever you square this inside, if you're coming up with negative answers right here, you are not using parentheses or you're not following the rules of multiplying negative numbers. Okay, so watch that this part right here will always be, once you finish, positive. Okay, so let's go and practice some. All right, let's see, what color will work? I think black. All right, so we're going to have a problem like this, x squared minus 2x minus 24. The first thing you want to do is make sure it's set equal to 0, which it is, and it is in descending order by the x's. All right, then you determine the a, b, and c. A is going to be your quadratic term, B is always going to be your linear term, and C will be your constant term, okay? So in this, you're going to only look at the coefficients. There will be no letters, no x's or variables in here in your answers. So the coefficient of my x squared value is a 1, so A is 1. My coefficient of B is negative 2. Remember that goes with the number. And then my constant C, which is negative 24. Okay, at this point you've got your A, B, and C. Now you can start plugging in. Now remember, this says opposite of B. Well, my B right now is negative 2. So my opposite of negative 2 is going to be a positive 2. And then my B squared is going to be negative 2 squared minus 4 times A, which is 1, and C, which is negative 24. And then all divided by 2 times A, which is 1. Now, what we want to do is clean up, so 2 will just come in the front. Now, we take everything inside under the radical without including that in our calculator, and we find out what that is. I'm going to bring up my calculator. We're going to find this out together, so you'll see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to move this over. So I'm going to say, and I'm going to use parentheses, just like I've got, negative 2 squared minus 4. And then from here on, if you just put times 1 times negative 24, it'll be okay. The problem I see with parentheses always has to be this first part, so always leave that in there. All right, so that makes 100 that goes right here. Okay? So, and then the last thing is 2 times 1, which is 2. All right, now we need to clean that up. All right, so 2 plus or minus the square root of 100. Well, let's write 2 plus the square root of 100 divided by 2, and then 2 minus the square root of 100 divided by 2. Because that's what that plus minus means. You have to do a positive version and a negative version. Now, remember when you're working with square roots, you need to close off the parentheses for the radical. Now, most of you will say, well, I know what the square root of 100 is. That's 10. So you would write 2 plus 10 divided by 2, and then 2 minus 10 divided by 2. Now, you must do all this in the numerator. Hit enter before you divide. Otherwise, it's going to do order of operations and give you a wrong answer. So you can figure that up. 2 plus 10 is 12. 12 divided by 2, which is 6. All right, 2 minus 10, which is a negative 8. Negative 8 divided by 2, which will make a negative 4. So my answers are, let's get a different color, getting hard to see. Whoa. My two answers are x is equal to 6 and x is equal to negative 4. So let's go back to our calculator, and we'll show you what that, show you what that does. Okay, I'm going to type in on this particular one, I'm going to type in graph x squared minus 2x minus 24. And I'm going to look at the graph. Okay, according to my answers, I had 6 and negative 4, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4. That's negative 4 right there. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right there. So those are my answers where it crosses the x-axis. So this is true. Now, that means if it has a whole number, we could have factored this and saved ourselves a lot of trouble. And that's okay. But we're going to have a lot of things that's going to come up with decimal answers when we're doing this because it wasn't factorable. We had to use the quadratic formula to get it. So you'll see what we mean when we're working on these in class. But this is just an example of how to use the quadratic formula. We will practice a lot of problems in class. And again, the trick is to do it in pieces. Okay, case 1, case 2. There's case 1 and case 2 here. Make sure that you keep them separate and you watch. Here's a big area where people make mistakes right here, and then of course when they throw it all in the calculator wrong. Very easy to do, but easy to make mistakes also. So come see me if you're having trouble with this in class. I believe that was all that was on this particular PowerPoint. It was. And I will see you in class. Bye.